Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the Mesa City Council meeting, and this is our study session for the 1st of April. I know we have a couple of council members that aren't with us physically. I don't believe either Mr. Heredia or Mr. Luna are on the telephone with us either. Is that correct? Mr. Luna or Mr. Heredia, are you with us on the phone? Yeah, we didn't expect them, but they are excused from this meeting. The first item on the agenda for today's meeting is to review the items on tonight's regular council meeting agenda. So council, if you could please refer to that item, that agenda. It's the same agenda we went over on Thursday. Mr. Whitaker.
Can I go section 6?
You bet.
So I had requested information from staff on items 6D, F, and G that I haven't received yet, and I'm wondering if we can table this to a future date until I receive that data.
Okay, so these are the bonds that were being issued that we had a presentation on Thursday.
So, Mayor and Councilman Whitaker, I'm not aware of the information you're requesting. What is the information you're looking for?
I was talking to Kennington about some financial reports, but I didn't get anything back today.
Did this happen over the weekend?
I don't remember the specific dates. Maybe start a conversation on Friday?
Councilmember Whitaker, I apologize. The questions you had about tables in the CAFR, I sent you that response at just an hour ago, so not much long ago. But it didn't have to deal with, it wasn't necessarily about the bonds. I think your questions were about some of the operating expenses in the enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative, right?
Did you have
I just don't know, is there a time?
Yeah, we're scheduled, what's this, go ahead and tell me.
Yeah, so in order to save the $12 million, $11 million of bonds, we have to take certain actions so that by the end of May, we close the bonds so that we can notify the investors with 30 days because the callable date is July 1st. And so that's why we've set up these steps to take in order to save the money for refund.
Yeah, is there enough time to push this out if everyone's okay with till next Thursday?
We're scheduled for presentations to rating agencies, and
Yeah,
we've
we have
got
calls with the
financial
lawyers.
advisors ready to go for closing. So I guess I'm trying to understand what the question is that's related to these items. These are the selling of bonds. It's not having to do with the operations of the O&M, I guess, is what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, well, I guess overall it does, because I'm trying to look at the revenue source of the utilities and how much money is actually being pushed into a reinvestment fund for capital improvement projects, right? And so the bonds, I'm assuming, are being used for capital improvement projects, and I haven't received any data in regards to what that fund looks like, how much money's, unless you've sent it like.
Yeah,
in the last
and I
hour.
apologize. Like I said, Mayor, Councilmember Whitaker, I sent the response on the fund balance for the RER fund, which we mentioned last week was the 2% of annual revenues that we put into a fund. I think in the CAFR, it showed that number to be 29 million in the latest CAFR.
But that's not going to change our recommendation on these sales. These are authorizations to issue bonds for specific projects that really aren't directly related to the RER.
And just a reminder, Councilmember Whitaker, these bonds have all been authorized by the voters for these capital projects that are identified.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not comfortable voting on this until I receive that data. So, I mean, we can do with it what we will, but I haven't got that data yet, so.
Well, I think you're free to take them off of the consent agenda if you'd like to vote against the issuance. Personally, as was indicated, the voters have already approved these bonds. I think a request to staff on a Friday when it's difficult to hold them responsible by Monday to respond to that, particularly when they work 410s. I'm comfortable moving forward, but certainly you have every right to take this off the consent agenda if you'd like to do that.
Well, sure. I mean, look, we get our agendas, 24 hours before the meetings on Thursdays, right? So I'm not sure.
Well, if you're asking to take it off the consent agenda, you have every right to do
Wait,
that.
but my goal isn't to vote against them. It's just a matter that I don't have enough time to review the data. surely there has to be a solution for that, right? Like, how close is the
Well,
timeframe?
you have the information in an email, right?
Yeah,
Could
so-
you read that between now and the time we go upstairs?
Yep.
I'll come, and we'll talk after this.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike.
And if you do want to take it off the consent agenda, just let us know and we'll discuss it upstairs. Any other, council, any other questions regarding anything on the agenda for tonight? I know that there has been a development with regard to agenda item 10A, which was the only item off the consent agenda, a zoning case. I believe the applicant has chosen to withdraw that case. Is that correct, Mr. Ray?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. So we'll see how the, Mr. Whitaker's questions regarding the bond issue goes, but if not, then currently everything is on the consent agenda. All right, the next item on our agenda for this meeting is to hear a presentation and discuss the fiscal year 2019-20 summary of the proposed budget. I'd like to welcome our budget office, Candace and Brian, back. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, we are presenting it'll be a summary overview of the city manager's proposed budget for fiscal year 1920. The proposed budget continues the efforts of the city to create and maintain a great place to live, work, and play. And within that is the key financial sustainability is to balance between meeting today's needs and also preparing for the growth. And one of those emphasis for the proposed budget for fiscal year 1920 is innovation. And I know it's been talked about in the council strategic plan about innovation, and what is included in the proposed budget is data-driven decisions and the staff to help to create those decisions, which helps make effective, efficient, and sustainable services. With that, we have a crime analyst, some IT engineers and analysts, and also two GIS specialists / technicians included in this budget to help move forward with the innovation emphasis of the budget. Also included is the design for the Innovation Studios building remodel.
Brian, GIS is Government Information Services? General Information?
Global.
Geographic
Geographic.
Information.
Spatial, being able to put a lot of our data in a data set that also gives a spatial relationship in the city, where all of our parks are, where all our different assets are. That's important, where the streets are, where the utilities are.
Thank you.
Another emphasis is one of the council strategic plans is the community safety. And on this slide with the police, I split it out into two. The left side is the general governmental. And with the general governmental, we've added the staff. And this combines staff new to the fiscal year 1920 budget, but also what we call mid-year positions that were brought on within this current fiscal year of 18-19. So we have, within the new proposed budget, we have 4 new positions in the general governmental. And in this current fiscal year, we added 11 positions within the police department. On the other side, also included in this budget is the public safety sales tax, which includes 17 sworn new positions and also 8 civilian positions.
Mr. Freeman.
Brian, on the civilian positions, are they going to supplement sworn officers in current positions that allow sworn officers to come back on the streets?
That is a good question, Mayor, Councilman, Vice Mayor Freeman. In a couple of, about a week, the police department will come and do a more detailed presentation for their operating budget, and that should be answered in there.
In the past have been used by sworn personnel.
Okay. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is this allows more officers to come from day positions into the field in one perspective or the other?
Correct, Mayor and Vice Mayor Freeman. That is, the civilian positions are a combination of those that actually, the support, like the civilian investigation officer type positions. Those are ones that take the reports in place of a sworn. Also, one for 1920 fiscal year is actually our very first aviation pilot as a civilian. And so they'll talk to you a little bit more about that.
Okay.
So they're constantly looking at those areas that we can civilianize where possible in order to free up those sworn positions to actually be out on patrol.
Okay,
But there are certainly civilian positions that are added just to support the additional sworn positions we're bringing on. So it's
Correct.
kind of a combination
Yeah.
of the two.
And I
I
will
get
say that
that.
a couple of examples here are two of the civilian positions listed here are actually supervisors for the forensics area. As we know, the forensics area is, works very hard and has a lot of throughput and is very good, but also needs to expand as their workload expands. And that would rather be another support position behind the sworn.
I guess
So those are
to,
just different examples.
part of my thinking is, so everybody knows that we're going to possibly get more police officers out on patrol or other positions so that it frees up some officers. In other words, you're putting 17 in, but then there will be some additional ones as well.
We think so, yeah.
Correct.
And I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
That
that's
is the
plan.
case.
Mr. Thompson?
Chris, do the civilian employees go against PD's headcount overall?
Well, yes, I mean, for the department, but then we'll separate the difference between sworn and civilian within the total complement of positions in the police department.
Because I want to make sure, like, in years past, we've always looked at head counts, I guess, within, budgeted positions, I guess. And I just want to make sure that the budgeted positions or the civilian positions and the sworn positions,
They're always separated.
Okay.
We identify those separately. And over the last couple of years, we took a lot of reductions in the civilian for a variety of reasons to manage within the budget. We also were able to civilianize some of the positions, so we took police officers out of jobs they were doing and put them back on the street and backfilled them with civilians. So we've done a combination, but the police department does recognize that at some point, having civilians who can do a lot of the support services to the police department and even some of the investigative work is certainly more cost-effective for the city overall.
I have a question that the asterisk at the bottom indicates that, and I know part of the sales pitch for the public safety sales tax was that we were going to add additional new police officers and firefighters. So that means numbers on top of maintaining, responding to attrition, right? And so it looks like we have 4 police officers that are coming in under the regular maintaining the force budget, and then 17 new sworn positions under the public safety tax. But explain to me, why are those 4 that are coming in under the regular budget coming in mid-year? Is that,
Mayor, we were responding to light rail. Those officers were specifically to a light rail initiative that was taking place last year for all the cities came together about how to fund our oversight of the public safety part of light rail. We were at one point using, was it overtime or off-duty? I can't remember.
We were
which one.
actually using through Valley Metro was,
Oh, right.
we were paying Valley Metro for security, and then our officers were going and working off-duty hours, so they were considered off-duty hours, and that was considered that they really should be, they're working in the city of Mesa.
Gotcha.
So,
And
yeah,
so we
yeah.
basically converted
what-
those over to police positions.
So we added, yeah, the services were already being provided by Valley Metro with our officers, but the way they were being paid didn't work out. So we
Okay.
ended up having to take those positions in-house.
thank you. And now, are they part of a different police academy class?
No, it's our officers, this is Mesa police officers.
Okay, and,
This year, they're just spending more time dedicated, there's commitments to being on the stations and in the parking lots, supporting light rail and going up and down the,
so these are folks that exist already on the force? Okay. So how do we add 4 people to the force that are already on the force, I guess?
So Mayor, and again, the department will do a more in-depth discussion
Yeah.
with you, but they do run 2 police academies a year, and we work very closely with them to to determine the number of recruits that we want to put through those academies, and those were taken into account. So when these police officer positions were created this year to actually create full-time positions, that was taken into account as they prepare for their July academy.
so we just add more open positions in the academy for them to hire on.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll look forward to learning more about that during the presentation next week.
So the next slide, also with the community safety, is fire and medical. And similar to the police, with general governmental, I split it out with two. The left side is general governmental, and I have both the new positions for fiscal year 19-20 listed. They have one new position, a GIS technician, but then also we have a fire recruit academy budgeted in there, along with the $1.5 million placeholder for training and coverage. And then on the public safety side, we actually, since the public safety sales tax is implemented March 1st, we are able to hire on 2 medical response units, the MRUs, which consisted of 16 positions, and we are currently funding them out of the public safety sales tax this fiscal year in 18-19.
Mr. Freeman?
I have to ask a question. So on the medic units, those are our current ambulances, let's say, use that word, that we're providing
Where it says transport?
Where it says transport?
Yes, where it says transport.
Transport's the key word.
Our transport coverage. So we're hiring paramedics and EMTs for those units?
Correct, Mayor and Vice Mayor,
Civilians.
those are civilians, right? Those are civilian medic units. So medic units means our transport units. That's our current pilot program that we have going on with the department.
Okay. So flipping over to the other side, the MRUs, 4 captains, 4 engineers, and 8 firefighters?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
So continuing an emphasis from last year, we did an emphasis on doing proactive code compliance. And with the council initiative of transforming neighborhoods, the city is looking to create a neighborhood leadership program. And it'll provide neighborhood leaders, residents, education on various resources within the city, which with that is hopefully with the also implementing the identification and removal of illegal dumping on city property and right-of-way. And with that initiative, this proposed budget includes 2 new positions and related equipment in the transportation department to help work with the code compliance office in this program. Also within this budget is what Travis presented last week is the smart city, and within the next month with the departments, they will go into a little deeper into the smart city objectives, which was streets. We're looking at the LED lights, facilities, a energy management program, utilities with the AMI, and then public safety with a real-time crime center and fire service analytics. And then also emphasized in this budget is the 2020 census. And in front of you is just a brief schedule of highlighted things that will be going on next year. So for instance, a year from today is actual Census Day. And with the start of that, in May through July, enumerators will be walking around and getting any non-responsive. And then towards the end of October, staff will come back with a final report. And within this budget, we also have funding from MAG of about $106,000. And then also we have about $50,000 for city staff for marketing, education, and community outreach for the 2020 census.
I'm sorry, MAG is giving us 106, or we're giving MAG 106?
We're giving MAG
MAG.
106.
Now, the good news is, Mayor, I did hear today that the region's going to commit $2 million
Right.
to do the awareness, marketing. MAG will put in $500,000 of the $2 million, and then the region, all the cities, will then divide up the 1.5, and I think this is then our number
Yeah.
out of that 1.5.
That was my question. This is our portion of the $2 million campaign?
Correct.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's a pretty good deal for this amount of money, then we leverage. Now, it's going to be for the whole region, but everybody should see it at the same time.
So on this next slide is the graph. It's just a reminder of, this is last year's graph, do a pie graph of 18-19 general governmental expenses. And this shows the operating expenses by department. And just a reminder of that the city is a service oriented organization, and that personal services is about 70% of our total budget, and with public safety, about 60% of the total budget for general governmental. So for fiscal year 19-20 proposed budget, this does include those positions previously in this presentation, and also it includes a 3% step increase for eligible employees. And also it includes the one-time funding, for instance, the Fire Recruit Academy and some other one-time life cycle.
Mr. Freeman?
Brian and Candace, on the 18-19, but I'm looking at the reserve balance percent, the very bottom line. Went from 16.4, you're projecting 19, finishing up 19 this year, dropping down to 17 for the
Yes,
next fiscal year.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Freeman, that is correct. And we are, the projected is increased over budget due to the retail sales and the sales tax. It has been a good year for the sales tax, and so we revised our revenue estimates up to account for those revenues.
So this is the revised portion?
Yeah.
The
Yes.
projected, yes, is the
Projected.
revised.
We just got I think we got our March, or not March, our, which one did we get in most recent? Oh, January.
January.
Yeah.
And if you look on the mayor, vice mayor, on the total sources, that's going to be what your revenues are. So you see for budget for 18-19, it's the 432.5, and so the revised projection is the 440.4. So you can see where the revenue projection is significantly higher in 18-19, and that's where you're getting that boost.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, Candace, what did you say the boost was from?
The increased sales tax, the strengthening the sales tax over this last year, we've seen a boost in our general governmental revenues.
The 1.75 to 2%?
No,
Oh,
no, sir.
activity.
The just sales
Activity.
tax in general. This, again, this is general governmental funds. It does not include the new public safety sales tax.
Because
That
it's
is not in
restricted.
here. Because
Well,
that's a
we've
restricted fund
restricted
and
it, yep.
right, it's tracked in a separate fund.
So it will never be reflected in these ending reserve?
We try to keep them separate.
That's
so we can
correct. It will
track them
not be in
separately.
this. It will not be in this graph. It'll be, we have a separate fund for tracking just those revenues.
Okay, thank you.
You're just saying the economy outperformed what you expected a year ago?
Yes.
Mayor,
That's
yes,
correct.
I do have a question on the future economic correction, just to educate me. Can you, looking at the actuals of 17-18 and our 18-19, and it has a negative 3 million. So how is, at first I thought that was an anticipated figure to correct, what we expect in the economy, but given these are actuals,
The only
I
actual,
don't-
the only actual, right, so the, right.
in the 17-18.
Okay, so last year, we started hearing rumors about a downturn.
Right.
So because our economy is doing pretty well last year, we actually purposely took $3 million out of our reserves and set them aside for an anticipated downturn in the economy. So if you'll follow that number across, that future economic correction, what we've done is taken $3 million out last year and set it aside in our reserves. We did the same thing again this year in the budget. We took another $3 million and said, we're going to put that aside for a rainy day fund. And then we've taken we're optimistic that we're not going to hit the recession next year. So we only took $1 million out of our reserves for the rainy day fund. So the idea is to have that rainy day fund, and then as the economy, and again, our crystal ball is as good as it can be. We're saying we're going to need to dip into that savings, that $7 million, that we've put together, we've put aside for the last 3 years. And then you see in that 22, 23, now you see it coming back in. You see what we've done? So the idea is we've tried to, we're just saying, listen, we think the economic correction is going to come. Let's start taking the dollars and setting them aside. And so we did $3 million one year, $3 million this year, $1 million next year. So the idea is we've kind of built in a $7 million specifically for a downturn in the economy. Now, if it happens sooner than 22, 23, or the impacts, we'll have it. We put it aside to say when I guess we're saying is we think that the biggest impact to us in the economic downturn where we need to insert a correction will be in 22, 23. It may happen sooner than that, but we have set aside we have more than the 7 million, I want to be clear, but we've tried to say, for the economic downturn, we've identified $7 million.
Yes.
The part that would be more than the 7 million would be our
Just
general
our
It's the
own
general fund
reserve,
balance.
yeah.
Reserve fund
We just identified this specifically.
So you're looking at the budget as though you didn't have the money. but
Yeah.
You
And we're
do
just-
have the money.
We have the
and
money,
then
but we're putting it kind of in our savings account.
setting it aside
Yeah.
for 22, 23,
Yeah.
and bringing it back in
If that's
there.
when we need it. If we need it sooner, we'll have it, right? As long as if it doesn't happen next year, beginning in July 1 through June 30th, we'll have set aside
Then you
another
can
$1
put
million.
it back in then.
But if it
If-
happens in 2021, we have $7 million for 2021,
that's-
or we have it 21, 22. We trying to see how long we could go before we needed it. But see, what's happening is the line above that, that net sources and uses, that's the trend that's keeps us up at night, because we know we're gonna have to make some changes eventually, right? Either the economy's gonna get better, or we're gonna have to hold back expenses, because you can see we're projected to use more than we're bringing in. But every year we do this, right? But if you were to go backwards in time, off the sheet to the left, you would see where at the bottom left where it says 22.1%, you know, we've usually had, I think you can go back 3 years from that point, we've always had over 20% reserves. So we always try to find a way, when we get closer to these out years, to make the corrections, whether we reduce expenditures and operations, or we have a better view of revenues and we know whether they're going to be higher than we expected. But we make those adjustments. But our history, our track record is, from like 3 years prior to this, I want to say, we've been over 20%, which is double our policy.
Right.
And then we're telling you, even our projection for the end of this current year, so in the June, will be just below 20%. But then you can see what happens is, as we've layered in all the conservative costs, step pay, implementing bond projects, the pension growth, all those in here, all these positions fully loaded up, you can start seeing how it starts to have a negative pressure on the budget. Again, it just kind of shows us we need to start, and the recession, we built that in, right? Because we took $7 million out of the budget during this time period. So we have the opportunity to put it back in whenever we need it, but that's just being very conservative on our part.
So typically, you would put a economic correction figure in, anticipating when you think there might be a downtrend in the economy. And if it's not, you just keep it kind of earmarked, so to
Well, that's
speak?
what we're doing here. We're kind of setting aside, as opposed to
But
just
it's-
letting it fall to the bottom in the reserves, which, as the mayor said, we can always use those too. But we felt like this was a way to be very specific about
Okay.
these dollars and why they're being set aside. We could change this and just
Put it
grow
in
that
actuals.
reserve by
Yeah.
$7 million.
Okay.
We could do
All
that way
right.
too.
Thank you.
So on the next slide, also included is the fiscal year 19-20 proposed budget for the enterprise fund. And this is consistent with the forecast that we presented with an increase. So notice just a slight increase in the reserve percentage, and that is due to a slight reduction in our capital transfer for some ongoing capital projects for life cycle.
Yes, Jeremy?
Where's the line item for the downtown economic investment? Or am I mixing that up with a different?
Mayor, Councilmember Whitaker, this is by enterprise, so water, wastewater. Each one of those, it's within the detail of each one of those programs. And so you'll be able to see that they're going to come forward on the 18th to make those presentations, and that would have the more detailed look. But this kind of sums everything up, expenses and sources. And so each one of them has a contribution toward that fund. And so it would be individually within those categories.
Just like they do for the general fund transfer.
Just like, exactly, same thing for the general fund transfers, same thing for the debt. That's why you don't see like a line here for the debt service transfer. It's within the expenses of each one of those entities.
Okay, thank you.
So this is just a summary slide.
Yes.
Chris, I noticed on the golf, we see the loss on the Dobson Ranch Golf Course. We're doing an RFP. are we expecting to at least break even, or is this going to continue to be a subsidized entertainment for the
See, you're
citizens?
jumping the gun. We got a great presentation here just for you that we're going to bring on golf. We have completed the RFP. We had a really good process. We had at the end, we had two very competitive proposals. We have designated one of the vendors that we're selecting. I don't know how public it is yet. I don't know if we've told everybody yet. But we have made a decision internally, the park staff has. We've been coordinating with Councilman Heredia because he has some stakeholders out there. They're very interested in what happens out at the golf course. But I think I don't know, do we have a date? Yeah, so probably, if it's not in the April agenda, we'll bring it to you in May. But the idea is they will take over all the operations. And so instead of us having to contribute in a fund like this, they'll take all the expenses. We will get, I think there's some formulas where we get a set amount each year, and then we can share in the revenues. But then the idea is for us is to set those dollars aside and help to contribute to a lot of the deferred maintenance that's taking place out there. But my goal and your goal is to try to get that to close to zero as possible.
Thank you.
So that's it for the presentation of the proposed budget. Next is we have a budget process calendar, and basically the month of April will be department presentations, starting this Thursday with fire. And moving on down, we'll also have a CIP overview. And then pretty much every week after that, there will be a department presentation. And moving on into May also, May 2nd, we'll end the department presentations. And then we will introduce on the 7th, no, that's not right.
That's not right.
Sorry,
Not
the
doing
7th,
that
that is, we're not doing that one just yet. But then we'll, in the May, we'll introduce the 5-year CIP plan, the tentative adopted, and then in June, we'll do the tax levy and the final adoption.
And also, Mayor and Council, we do want to point out that this, again, was a very high-level summary presentation. In your Legistar item attached to that is also a very much longer report. So anything, we kind of just hit the general governmental funds and the enterprise fund. But in that report has all of the funds. So if you're looking at, if you want to look at the trust funds or the public safety sales tax, which is new, those types of things, and also department descriptions. So not all of the departments necessarily present to council, but all the departments are represented in that report. So if you want to see what's happening in those departments' budgets, you can take a look at that report.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions? Yes, Jeremy?
Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate during this meeting or a future one. Maybe you already have this plan, but does this proposed budget assume that the utility rates that we approved last year are going to stay the same? Or is this going to have, what impact will this have on utility rate projections?
Mayor and Councilmember Whitaker, this proposed budget for the enterprise fund assumes that there will be no change in the utility rates until February 1st of 2020. And at that point, we would come back next fall to talk with the council about what that might be or what that might look like. And we'll have an updated forecast for you at that time and have that discussion at that time.
Yeah, but what is does this proposed budget and projection assume that the 5-year outlook schedule for utility rates will remain the same as it was last year?
So what's different is for this year, the answer is it's different because it has 0% in it, at least through February. Beyond that, it did continue with the previous percentages or rates that we had indicated before. But all those have to be reviewed because we still haven't presented to the council or had a discussion about the future 2020 utility bond package and how that would affect those projects, and the debt service associated with that would affect rates into the future. So until we can pull all that together and come up with some dollar amounts for that, right now we are assuming what's different is right now there, at least through February, no rate increase. But then we would come in the fall and talk about, or we have some time to talk about future capital projects, the associated debt, and other pressures associated on the utilities, whether it's commodity costs, labor costs, and bring those to the council.
Right, so I'm trying to figure out how does this proposed budget impact that schedule for
So
the
the
next
proposed
5 years?
budget that you have in front of you through February will have a no rate increase for utilities.
Yeah, I'm not talking about specific to February, though. I'm talking about, it's a 5-year outlook that we do, is that correct? Is that,
Right.
if I remember?
But
That's
you're
what I
not
have on the
adopting,
screen.
you're not adopting those rates. I mean, yes, I think I answered the question. The answer is we have assumed the same rates that were presented at the end of last year. But we're not asking council to adopt those rates. We only adopt rates for each year. So
Yeah.
those are projections.
I understand. The projections from, the 5-year projections from last year, does this proposed budget assume that those 5-year rate adjustments will stay the same as we approved them last year, other than the 0% increase to February of
Yes.
2020? Thank you.
Well,
But you don't approve them, they're identified, but there's no council is not taking action on future rates, other than the current year.
right, so when we approved a small rate increase
2%
last
rate
year,
increase.
the 2%, that was just for the 1 year. It wasn't a 5-year schedule of rate increases. It was a one-time increase that,
I understand it's a year-over-year
But you-
increase, but the
you're-
proposed budget assumes a 5-year outlook, which then also directly affects a
The pro-
5-year outlook on the utility rates,
The
right?
I want to be careful. The forecast makes assumptions that they're carrying on from the proposed budget and the rates that are assumed there. That's correct. But each and every year, we evaluate the need for those rates for the next coming year. So it's not accurate to say that when we present to the council, we're adopting rates for the next 5 years. That doesn't happen. I don't know of a year where we've come back with exactly the same rate after we've, presented a budget. There's always some changes going on and modifications that are happening. For example, last year, I think we came to council with a 3.5% increase, and council said, no, take it, we brought it down to 2%. And this year, after hearing council's concerns about rates, we've kept that, at least through February, at 0%. There are some categories in the rates, maybe on the commercial side and other areas where we may be suggesting rate increases. But we make those decisions as we get to those days to present them to council. But we're not adopting 5-year rates.
I understand we're not adopting 5-year rates,
Okay.
but, I mean, we're obviously not adopting a 5-year budget either, right? But you're
Right.
forecasting what the 5-year
Correct.
budget looks like. My question is, if this is what the forecast for the budget looks like for the 5 years, this has a direct impact on what the 5-year schedule looks like for utility rate increases. So what I'm trying to figure out is, does this 5-year scheduled budget change the 5-year projected utility rate increase that we saw last year? Or is it safe to assume that if we adopted this proposed budget, that the 5-year outlook for utility rates looks identical to what it looked like last year?
Except for this year, we're at 0%, that's
Except
correct.
for this year at a 0%. That's a safe assumption then?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And Mayor and Councilmember Whitaker, that would run through the whole forecast. That has done the assumption that the rates would now be effective in February 1st of every year. So that would be the same rate as what was in the schedule last year, but with a delayed implementation every year of the forecast. So it would be delayed every year. So we wouldn't have any increases until February 1st, and then that schedule would put into place every year after that. So that's a decrease in revenues, or a decrease in revenues coming from the customers every year of the forecast, and that has been included in this.
okay, so for example, slide number 12, the forecasted numbers for utility revenues, that anticipates other than this forthcoming year, in future years, for example, we have a 2021 or 21, 22, 22, 23. Those forecasts anticipate utility rate increases.
Correct. Those forecasted years anticipate the schedule that was given to council last year,
Right.
only with a delayed implementation, which is a difference in the dollars in the forecast. Those have been taken into consideration, that the utility rate implementation would now be on February 1st. So that does change the revenue outlook for the forecast, and those have been included in this forecast.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Any other questions, council? All right, thank you very much. Thank you for that great presentation. And again, this will be the subject of many more meetings over the next month or two. The next item on our agenda for this meeting is item 2B. That's appointments to the Economic Development Advisory Board and the Transportation Advisory Board. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Freeman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3 is acknowledge receipts of board minutes. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, gentlemen. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is to hear reports on meetings and conferences attended. Anything you'd like to share with us? Ms. Duff.
Yes, I'd like to share that I was at the Water Now Alliance last week. That's why I missed a study session. But it is an alliance of cities across the United States that are looking at the water uses, whether it's, or water in general, whether it's infrastructure or stormwater conservation and technology. And I had quite a few takeaways, which I'll be discussing with Water Resources and as far as what we are doing, but particularly in recycling and reuse and on-site management. And so we can continue to conserve our groundwater. Thank you. Yes, yes. The mayor, Councilmember Luna, and I were at the Falcon Field Open House on Saturday. And it just amazes me how many people participate. Not only our citizens were there, but many of the businesses around aeronautics. There was lots of giveaways and music and fun. And it was a beautiful day out. And I thank you, everybody, for coming out as well as participating in the event.
That was a great event. I mean, people were parking miles away and walking into the festivities. So, yeah, Falcon Field was a very popular place last weekend. Mr. Freeman?
You didn't take a helicopter in, Mayor?
No.
They
Usually
were
ride
too busy.
helicopters.
They were busy.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to attend I got invited to a Mesa Fire Department picnic, and so I got to go to that. It was held over by Fire Station 205. And it was well attended. I think it was well surpassed their expectations, and great turnout. It's fun to be held there. A lot of kid events, and I think it's been about 13 or 14 years that you haven't had one. So having one for the fire department was good for employee morale, and a lot of great people there. The honor band was playing their pipes and drums, and listening to that, and as well as other stuff going on. So thank you, chiefs, for putting that on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitaker?
Question, Jen, the Falcon Field thing, I heard there was a quadricopter that somebody debuted there, right? Can you comment, did it fly, did it work? No. No, okay. Fair, okay, so it's just a piece of plastic, essentially? Yeah, big fan. Got it.
This is a personal flying device.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very cool.
I almost came out just for that.
Yeah. Yeah, a hovercraft to get around, yeah. Mr. Thompson, do you have something? Okay. Thank you. Other comments under reports and conferences? If not, Mr. Brady, what's our schedule look like?
Mayor, council, look forward to seeing you on Thursday, April 4th. And we'll be reviewing a CIP update as well as a budget presentation for the fire and medical department.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you. All.
Don't know if it needs to be during the meeting or after, but
Yeah.
I'll request 3 items be taken on consent.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and let us know now, and we'll make sure that they're off.
6D, F, and G.
All right, I'm sorry. 6D, F, and G. Okay, you got that, Kevin? 6D, F, and G are off the consent, and it would probably be good. I know we had a presentation on this last Thursday, but maybe Mr. Kennington or someone can just give us a brief explanation for what those items are. All right, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.